Finding one of her neighbours waiting for the lift to arrive, Molly nodded politely. She'd noticed the striking older woman on several occasions on this floor. However, they had never been formally introduced. "Nice day out," the woman remarked, her eyes sparkling in amusement as she took in Molly's outfit. "Takes me back to my youth when we wore skirts that barely covered our asses as a form of rebellion. A fuck you, I suppose, to the men who oppressed us for centuries, pieces of shit." Molly's lips twitched as she tried not to laugh. The last thing she expected was to hear cursing from a woman who must have been 60 years old, if a day, given she seemed so sweet, although quite eccentric. Her dyed black hair cut into a 1920s-style bob that skimmed her sharp jawline. Her tight skin, Molly suspected, the result of a gifted plastic surgeon, rather than a genetic blessing passed down from her ancestors. You should have heard the uproar when Jean Shrimpton wore a so-called scandalous dress to the races in the 60s. Molly smiled politely, praying the lift would hurry up, while the woman relaxed back against the wall, settling in for a chat. "I would have loved to live in that time, although I don't know who Jean Shrimpton is. It surprises me that a dress could cause such an uproar, though." The bell sounded just before the lift doors opened, and they stepped inside. "If you lived back then, nothing would surprise you, my dear. You need to thank the women who came before you and fought the good fight so you can enjoy the freedom and rights you young ones take for granted." Molly felt her face start to flush as the woman's face softened and she smiled, her gaze fixed on Molly's. Jean was a model who attended the 1965 Victoria Derby Day, held on the 30th of October, if my memory serves me right. She was expected to arrive early that morning, but ended up running 2 hours late. I think it was a publicity stunt, to tell you the truth, as it was well known Flemington's fashionable crowd had been waiting in frenzied anticipation to see what the most beautiful girl in the world would wear for her Melbourne Cup Carnival debut. I was one of those fashionable people in attendance, and the universe smiled down on me that day, allowing me to witness it all play out. Even though I was dreadfully jet-lagged. I had only arrived back from India the day before, after spending 6 months on a spiritual pilgrimage, trying to find myself. That bitch was always 2 steps ahead of me, so we never met. She laughed, her eyes glittering mischievously as she recalled the event as if she were back there, emotion flooding her face while her perfectly painted red lips spread into a slow smile. "Enough about me, and more about the beautiful Jean." She lowered her voice, her eyes widening dramatically, while gazing at Molly as if she were a child she was about to recite a bedtime story from memory to. As the anticipation grew and people started to become agitated, the then 22-year-old Jean at last emerged from her chauffeured car to make her way across the lawns in front of the members' stand with her actor boyfriend, Terence Stamp, when suddenly the crowd fell silent. Bare-legged and fresh-faced in a simple white shift dress, she was the epitome of youthful coltish beauty as she picked her way across the grass. But on the sweltering spring afternoon, she was wearing none of the mandatory accessories for the members' enclosure. Her hat, gloves and stockings were missing. Even more shocking, her dress finished 5 inches above her knees. I had such a crush on her, was delighted to see what a rebel she was. Made me adore her even more. She laughed uproariously and pulled her face in mock horror, causing Molly to giggle as they arrived on the ground floor. Molly stepped out of the lift, pausing to wait for her sprightly neighbour. Can you believe the following day on the front page of the Sun newspaper it raged? There she was, the world's highest paid fashion model, snubbing the ironclad conventions of fashionable Flemington with a dress 5 inches above the knee. No hat, no gloves and no stockings. I laughed so hard I nearly wet my pants. Well, I would have if I ever wore them. I prefer going commando, as you young ones call it. Molly giggled to herself, glancing across at her new companion. I felt like I was there the way you told that story. You sound like you've lived an interesting life. She smiled up at Molly, the older woman no more than 5 feet tall, and let out a musical laugh. Darling, you have no idea the fun I've had and the people I've met. No one has ever accused old Vivian Sparks of being boring. She continued to laugh as they walked side by side towards reception. "My mother named me after Vivian Leigh, as I was born on the 30th of April 1940, the same day Gone with the Wind premiered in Sydney. You must understand I was burdened with a certain reputation to uphold since birth. She was said to be quite unpredictable." "Mad as a cut snake, I heard." Molly's hand flew to her mouth as she mentally kicked herself, while Vivian howled with laughter, stopping to hold her stomach for a moment as she continued to laugh. "There you are. You're as slow as a wet week," Ian called out as he crossed the room. Molly rolled her eyes before turning her attention back to Vivian, who wiped tears from her face as she caught up to them, straightening her dress before nodding at Ian courteously. "This is my neighbour, Miss Vivian Sparks. Vivian kept me entertained on our way down in the lift." Ian politely shook her hand before she excused herself and made her way towards the front door, as though she was a 20-year-old girl, not an old woman about to turn 80, while calling over her shoulder for all the reception to hear. "Time stands still for no one, so go and enjoy your day. I certainly intend to, as I'm having breakfast with a new love interest. At my age, you need to strike while they still have a heartbeat. It certainly helps." Stepping through the front door, the delightful woman disappeared from their sight, while her melodious laughter floated back through the open doors,